So, Screaming from the Sidelines has focused a lot on individual teams lately. This last episode, we talked to Daniel and Rel from Pels and Whistles. Pelicans, pretty hot right now, and they're impressive. But another team that was really impressive to start the season is the Portland Trailblazers, and they should be getting their star, Damian Lillard, back today, which is why I wanted to bring in somebody else from the Bleav network who knows a lot about this really exciting team. So this is Stephen Vaughan. He is a content producer for 750 The Game in Portland, and he's also the host of the Bleav in Blazers podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, Blazers are kind of a fun team, which was surprising to me. Not a lot of Portland had a lot of expectations, especially me, but they've come out strong at the start of the year and struggled a little here. But now with Dame coming back, I think we're all feeling pretty good.
Yeah, they really have had a tale of two seasons already in this first quarter to a third of the season. It's been pretty wild. Right now, they are the 9th seed in the West at 12-11. And that's kind of about where people would have expected them to end the season coming into the year. They thought they were about a play-in caliber team with a chance to make it into the playoff series, but it hasn't really been consistent to start the year. Like, you're starting things off with Damian Lillard looks like himself. Chauncey Billups can coach. They hit on their draft pick, Shaedon Sharpe. They're getting good wins. Started 9-3, won in Phoenix without Dame. And then they lost 7 of 8, fell to 11-11. Shaedon Sharpe cooled off a little bit. The defense was a little shaky. We don't really know when Gary Payton II is going to start playing. So all of a sudden, things completely turn upside down. They did get a win last night in Utah, a much needed one. So they're at 12-11. And yeah, I said the 9th seed, but there's just a 2-game separation between seeds 4 and 10 right now. So seeding's not a super big deal. Let's address the obvious, which is it's hard to win in the NBA without your best player. And Dame has only played in 11 games. He's averaging over 26 points per game when he's out there. And on top of what he brings to the team as a prolific basketball talent, he's become the veteran leader who's one of the few pieces to stick around through this rebuild / transitional phase now that they traded CJ McCollum last year. So, Steven, 16 games in 29 days. It was a tough schedule. November, very challenging month. Dame's coming back today, I believe, against Indiana, and there was reason for optimism. Like, it's hard to quantify things sometimes, but I guess we'll start with just a little quantity question. If you had to go on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the optimism surrounding the Detroit Pistons and 10 being the optimism surrounding the 96 Chicago Bulls, where are you at with the Blazers right now?
I mean, I think for me right now, I'm at about a 6.5. And I was one of the people in Portland that was really down on the Blazers coming into the year. I had them at 10 coming into the season in the Western Conference. So that start they had at the start of the year was really shocking to me, especially because you talked about it too. Like, the schedule was really tough, and they started out 9-3, first in the Western Conference, and this city just embraced this team. You know, they're hitting game-winning shots. Jeremy Grant hits the shot in Phoenix. They all take a picture, and they're all standing at the post games together. Then, like, the next night, Josh Hart hits one in Miami, and they do the same exact thing. Dame's right out there. He isn't even playing, and they're winning these games. And so the optimism went out the roof, right? Shaedon Sharpe comes out, plays awesome. He has, he's hit a, kind of a wall a little bit after not playing at Kentucky. Last 7 games, he's shooting 30%, really struggling, but he still puts up these monster dunks that you're like, all right, we get it. Like, this guy is very good and has a chance to be really, really good. And now with Dame coming back, 12-11, I tried to take this season into quarters basically. And I said at the end of November, they had 22 games. I thought they'd be about 6-16, 7-15, something like that. So at 11-11, I was more optimistic than most of the fans, as the fans had then flipped back to saying, okay, this team, same old Blazers, injuries, all this kind of stuff. So I think it's in the middle here. I think for me and for fans, like, we want to be very optimistic, but at the same time, all these injuries that have accumulated and the struggle that they had, they lose, like you said, 8 or 9 games, and it's the way they're doing it. That's the problem right here, is defensively, they are not very good again. And that's, it has been a real change. The last 11 games, they have given up 110 or more 10 times. Where at the start of the year, it was, I Bleav it was like 4 to their first 8, something like that. Like they were actually they're playing good defense, which is something they hadn't done. And so it's kind of reverted back to the old Blazers. But I think for me, in a general sense, optimism is high because I don't think they're a championship contender this year. I don't think they're close. But what I do think is the addition of Jeremy Grant, the addition of Shaedon Sharpe, Josh Hart, the way he fits in. Damian Lillard hasn't even played. They're still playing well. Anfernee Simons has a big game in Utah last night. He's showing why he's getting $100 million. There are pieces to build with. And I think you have the commitment with Dame. You got to build around that for the next couple seasons to hopefully, catch lightning in the bottle and become a championship contender. But it's not this year. But for me, like I'm more excited about this team than I was heading into the year.
The reason I called it a rebuild / transition is because when you still have your star player who's looking like himself, you can't really call it a full rebuild, but the roster is very young. It's very new. Anfernee Simons stepping into a larger role. Jeremy Grant coming over from Detroit. A lot of people talk about now he's in his perfect role where he was getting underutilized in Denver and Oklahoma City, then overutilized in Detroit. Now he's in Portland, where if everyone's healthy, he's kind of that tertiary offensive option. He's been money for the most part. Listen, I mean, the next 4 games are the Pacers, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and then the Timberwolves again at home. I'm actually going to be at one of those Timberwolves games, so I'm really excited to take a little trip from NorCal all the way up to Portland. And then after that, you're going to have a 6-game road trip with the 3 Texas teams, Spurs, Mavericks, Rockets. Then you get the Thunder twice and the Nuggets. I know everyone likes to play the schedule game. I guess we'll break it down by home and road. What would be a desired number of wins for this home stint? 4 games, you got Pacers, Nuggets, Timberwolves with an injured Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I think you're looking at if you're going betting lines, which I love. I would say 2.5, but it's juiced to the under. I would say 2 is the most likely number in this situation. If you get 3, I think that would be awesome. But a 2-2 split looks about right. They already did beat Denver this season at home. They won by 25, so that is a winnable game. But I do think Denver is still a better team than Portland. And you talked about Minnesota, Karl-Anthony Towns being hurt. Are they even better with Karl-Anthony Towns out? They might be. Like they might play better that way with still unknown. I like Cat, but there's been talk about that. So I think 2-2 is very likely in this situation. If they get 3, that would be a really good homestand because Dame's still coming back from that calf injury, which is the second time he's hurt it this season. So I'm really interested to see how Dame comes back tonight. I'm going to be at the game tonight against the Pacers. I'm excited to see how Dame looks because the way he was doing this year, it's all about explosiveness. Like that's how he always scores all his points. It's those step back threes that we're so used to, but it's not necessarily a bunch of skill. It's explosion that he has to create space. And so you need your cap in that situation. He's been struggling a little bit this year. The shooting numbers are down a little bit, 33% from 3, 42 overall. That's not Dame numbers. So I want to see Dame come back healthy, but I do think 2-2 is very likely. 3-1 would be a great little homestand here.
You mentioned Denver and Portland having success against them once already this year. Portland, Denver, they can put the same label on them so far. And I'd honestly throw 2 other teams in the West into this category, which is Golden State and the Sacramento Kings, which are all teams that highly capable of scoring. You don't really see a lot of issues on the offensive end. You see potential for explosiveness, but the defense has been a little shaky to start the year, and that's something that probably needs to be cleaned up over the long haul. I know that Denver and Golden State are more thought of as championship contenders, whereas Portland and Sacramento more looking to get into a playoff spot. But Denver is going to be a really good test because I don't know how long they are going to play at this rate and still find success and have the 2-time MVP cover up a lot of their errors just because he's so dominant on the offensive end. I also discussed at the beginning of last show, could the Timberwolves be better without Karl-Anthony Towns? You're thinking it. A lot of people are thinking it because this is a team that's been rather underwhelming to start the year. They traded about 74 draft picks to get Rudy Gobert and seem to really invest in the present, not worrying about the future. And Anthony Edwards has been a little inconsistent. We don't really know if he likes playing in big lineups. Now with Karl Anthony Towns down, it's a chance for Chris Finch and the staff to tweak with some lineups a little bit. But and of course, you mentioned the betting. This is a betting show. So Portland, by the way, best team against the spread on the road, 10-4. They have been a very pleasant surprise and heavily undervalued without Damian Lillard. So you mentioned what you're hoping to see in this homestand. Let's talk about the road schedule, because being on the road is always a harder task when you're playing professional sports. But if you look at this schedule, pretty doable on paper, right? The Mavericks are really good at home, so that's going to be a tough one with the way that Luka plays in front of that home crowd. But you get the Spurs and the Rockets, who are at the bottom of the West. Then you get the Thunder, who I would say are fun, but not necessarily good. You get them 2 times, and then you get Denver again. Depending on how this upcoming game goes, it's going to be interesting to see who's seeking revenge there. So that's 6 games you got to look forward to. What are you hoping out of that 6-game stint?
Well, I talked about this at the start. Like, the November schedule and the October schedule was incredibly tough. Earlier in the year, the Blazers had a 6-game stretch. It was Phoenix back-to-back, Miami, Charlotte, New Orleans, Dallas. And they went 4-2 in that 6-game stretch, which was crazy. Like, nobody expected that. And that was right at the peak when everyone was buying in. Now you look at this 6-game stretch, and you touched on it. A lot of the bottom teams, like, this Blazer team has played really well when no one expects them to play well this year. And so I think now that they're kind of down a little bit, I was on them last night against Utah. I think I'm going to be on them again today against Indiana. And I've been against them most of the year. Like, I'm coming across as pretty positive right now, Greg, but like, I was actually probably the most negative person on this team. I thought this team wasn't very good. I didn't like the fit of anybody, and it's been a nice surprise for me. But I do think that 6-game stretch is going to be important. Like, for the Blazers to prove that they are a playoff team. And I think right now the realistic expectations, renewed expectations, are at least get to the playoffs, right? Like, for me, it was playing. That's kind of the expectations. Now it's to actually get in that 8-seed field. You got to go 4-2 in that road stretch. That 6-game stretch against the Spurs, Mavericks, Rockets, Thunder twice, and the Nuggets. I mean, you can maybe split against the Mavericks and the Nuggets, lose both of them, but win the other 4. Like, I think that is realistic. I think it's doable. And I think Vegas has caught up a little bit to the surprise and the value, like you said, of the Portland Trailblazers. They've been great against the spread. I believe in the first 20 games, they were favored in maybe 5 of them, 6 of them, and their record was like, 11-9 overall on the money line. So, like, they've been outperforming expectations all year. I think it's kind of caught up a little bit the last few games, and it's going to continue. But I do think, like I said, 2-2 home stretch, a 4-2 road stretch. I think that's going to be a good start for the Trailblazers in the month of December to kind of put them in a position in the Western Conference where they can say, okay, we're really competing for that top 6 to get that 6th seed and get in the actual playoffs.
It's so fascinating to look at betting and when and if Vegas catches on to certain teams, because I've done it with a whole NFL season and watching that in a trajectory. This is the first time I'm looking at betting in the NBA for a whole season. So it's a lot of it is brand new. And Portland, you mentioned they're finally catching on a little bit. Took a while. Cleveland, I think they caught on really quick because when you have the star power of Donovan Mitchell, it's going to generate noise. And Cleveland went from by far the best against the spread to now just kind of in the mix among those top teams. Sacramento has been really slow to catch on, which maybe it's just denial that the Kings actually might be good-ish.
I think that's the thing. It's the Kings. I mean, are they good? I mean, we've seen so many times they aren't, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, in fact, one of the reasons that made me Bleav in the Kings a little bit is because Portland, in that opening game, they came into the Golden One, and great run by the Blazers in that last 4 minutes to close it out. But for the most part, both teams were really competitive with each other. And then as you start watching the coming weeks, both teams were overperforming a little bit. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe I know it's just one game, but maybe it's a good sign for both of these teams, the fact that they were playing hard. So you talked about 4-2 on the road in a really tough schedule when they didn't have Dame. Now it's a much easier schedule on paper, and they should be getting Lillard back. I don't know if they have any back-to-backs in that stretch, possibly against the Thunder. So maybe Dame might not play all 6 of those games, but just another thing to keep an eye on.
They have one back-to-back. It's the Dallas Houston game. It's game 2 and 3 in the stretch.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and I assume if Houston is the back end, they might be a decent opportunity to sit Dame.
Yeah, I think one of them, I think it's pretty safe to say they will not see Damian Lillard.
Right. Okay. So we talk about Jeremy Grant. Is this his perfect role? I want to discuss Anfernee Simons a little bit with you, though, because you've been positive on the show. I think it's fair to be negative coming into the season because we didn't really know a lot. Is Damian Lillard going to be himself? What is Chauncey Billups even as a coach? Like, we didn't really get to see that on display last year because they were sort of trying to tank in the first place. A lot of pleasant surprises, but Anfernee Simons, I found just by reading over the past week or so, has been a little bit of a polarizing figure in Portland. We obviously know he puts up numbers. He is very talented on the offensive end, but some are getting a little critical of him just shooting the ball at a crazy high volume and playing for numbers without necessarily helping the team. What are your thoughts on Simons?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I like Anfernee Simons. I was a little questionable on the $100 million deal because he had played basically 30 real games of NBA basketball, like as a starter. He started like 30 games, and then you're going to say, okay, here's $100 million. Like, you are the number 2 of this franchise. That's pretty early to do that. And like you said, last season was such a fake season. Like, it was well known the Blazers were tanking the entire time. And as soon as Anfernee Simons blows up, they sit him out. So you really hadn't seen him in big time situations. Like, he was a role player on the team that played the Nuggets in the playoffs, but he wasn't a big factor. So I was questionable. Now, I will say this about him. People, I think, are expecting him to be the next Damian Lillard. That's not going to happen. And when the Blazers had CJ McCollum, it was when they were both young, it was the decision of who are we going to build around, Dame or CJ? Dame or CJ? Who's the best out of those two? At a time that was CJ McCollum, most people were on CJ McCollum's bandwagon. Then Dame elevated, took that step, and it was pretty obvious, but they kept both, and that was the problem. I think people are doing that again right now with Anfernee Simons. They're seeing his numbers, they're watching him play, and he doesn't necessarily make his teammates better. He gets okay assists, but he still has a hard time reading plays when he's coming off the pick and roll to feed other players and get them in good spots to score. So I think he's more of a CJ McCollum type player, but he has the athleticism that CJ McCollum doesn't have. And so that's the potential. He's going to be able to score 23, 24, 25 a night. And I think that's pretty easy. He's doing that right now. But the next step for him is he's got to be able to get his teammates involved and make them better. He does not do that. He also is a poor defender. And that has been well known and well documented as well. The Blazers, 2 small guards in the backcourt. Once again, Damon CJ, now Damon Ant, all bad defenders. And that's going to be a problem when you try to get better too. So yes, Anfernee Simons is having a good season, and I am positive about the Blazers, but like, he's still one of the guys I need to see another step. And I don't know if there's that step in his game because he right now has a very tunnel vision of, I'm going to get buckets because I am more athletic and I'm skilled. I'm going to show off my skills, but this doesn't necessarily translate to winning basketball.
He reminds me a lot, actually, of what Jordan Poole was 2 seasons ago. Not G League Jordan Poole, but not last year Jordan Poole being a valuable piece on a championship team. Very talented offensive player, had tunnel vision to get buckets, could be an absolute liability on defense, and you just didn't really know what to expect. But I like that insight on Anfernee Simons because I think more casual fans or people who just follow the league in a big picture but don't narrow in on a team as much are going to spend a lot of time looking at short snippets, highlight plays, articles, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not critical of anybody doing that. In fact, that's a lot of what I do, just sort of monitoring the league as a whole. Love getting to hear it from people who narrow in so much closer to a team, and that's what we get to have today. So,
well, it's cool that you mentioned the Jordan Poole comparison because that's a big one on Blazer Twitter. Like, people always just randomly put out, remember, people thought Jordan Poole is better than Anfernee Simons. Like, those are just like tweets Blazer fans put out because they hate it. Like, they think everyone's against the Blazers, which is kind of true. Like, we're up here in the Northwest, we're just this little team, nobody cares about us. But like, Jordan Poole is the one guy that's like, Blazer fans take it very seriously and say, no, Anfernee Simons is much better than Jordan Poole. Like that is a real thing up here in Portland. So it's funny that you mentioned him when you compared Anfernee Simons to him.
Oh man, I wonder if that's going to create any turmoil in the crowd when the Dubs come up to the PNW. That'll be fun.
Could be, man. It could be.
So I don't really know. I was thinking about this and I'm like, I'm going to ask this question because I actually have no idea what the answer is going to be. Is it too early to start looking at the trade deadline for the Blazers? And is that something you would look at all?
To sell or to buy?
To buy.
I'm looking at it right now. This team, because, okay, this team has made it really clear that they want to make the playoffs, right? Like, I think it's going to take a lot for them to say, we're tanking, we're going to have a bad year. No, I think this is very clear they're going for the playoffs. And this team, right, the depth, they have no depth on this team whatsoever. With GP2 out, we have no idea. We haven't heard anything about it. We didn't even know he had the surgery till a month or two after he had the surgery. Like, it wasn't announced. Nobody announced it. We were surprised when we heard the news. And then it was, oh, he'll be ready for training camp. Okay, 2 weeks reevaluated, 2 weeks reevaluated, 2 weeks reevaluated. Like, that's the news of GP2. We have no idea. On our station, 750 the game, we had one of the guys, Sean Hyken, Rose Garden Report. He's really good reporter that he does that. He said he hopes that GP2 comes back within the next week. And if he doesn't, there's a lot of concern that we have no idea when he's going to come back. And so for Portland right now, you look at their bench last night against the Jazz. Greg Brown III was playing. I mean, he is not a very good basketball player for, I'm trying to be nice about it. Like, he's just not very good.
Had one cool dunk, though.
He had a cool dunk that made the Nuggets really mad, which I was kind of on the Nuggets side, I Bleav. You shouldn't be doing between the legs dunks at the end of the game, but that's a different question. That's a whole different story. Shaedon Sharpe, who I mentioned, has been struggling, has Talbot struggled, rookie, and then Jabari Walker, rookie out of Colorado, who we all like here in Portland, but again, rookie player. Those were the three guys that played off the bench. This team has no depth. This team has no guy off the bench that can come in and, make a play for somebody else or even themselves. Like, Shaedon Sharpe's not quite at that level. You can't consistently count on it. So I'm definitely looking at a piece like you can bring off the bench or even go into the starting unit, and then you could bring a Josh Hart off the bench, who has shown the ability at some points in his career with Portland to be able to create for himself. But this team definitely needs another ball handler that can create their own shot and create some plays. So no, I think you're right on. Like, I'm looking at it right now because if the Blazers are really going to go for the playoffs, which I Bleav they are, I have no reason to Bleav they're not, they need to add at least one piece to this team, and preferably another piece is another backup big. Like, there's a couple pieces that are missing in this team, but they need a couple for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying the buy versus sell. I think if they were playing this well at the start of the season and looking to sell, that would just be infuriating to all fans. So, yeah, I mean, it's a team that I think they're really fun. I think Damian Lillard is a proven superstar who elevates in the craziest of moments. So getting a little bit more support and depth would be the big glaring red flag on this team right now. But it's possible that they could do it. And that's going to lead me to another question, which is like, of course, the goal is always to win a championship. But realistically, how well would the Blazers need to finish this season for you to consider it a success and feeling optimistic toward October 2023?
I mean, I think realistic success for me is to actually make the 8 seeds, one of the 8 seeds in the playoffs. And I know it's low expectations, but I had low expectations coming in. I didn't think they would make it. I thought they were the 10th best team in the Western Conference. So if they actually make the round of the final 8 teams in the Western Conference, I do think that's a positive season. Now, I think for me, like, building forward, it's not necessarily about where they finish. It's just how they look, right? And when you talked about Chauncey Billups, we had no idea if he could coach. It was a fake season a season ago. The first 10 of 15 games, he looked awesome as a coach. We were all excited. The last 10 or so games, there have been some questionable decisions out of Chauncey Billups. He hasn't adjusted very much. It's still the same type of system that they're running at the start of the year to right now, and teams have adjusted to their zone defense a lot. So we need to see a lot out of Chauncey Billups. I think it's more just growth on the court. I don't care if they're the 8 seed. I don't care if they're the 4 seed. I don't think it's going to change my mind for next season. But what I do want to see is I want to see how Ant and Dame play together, how they gel with one another. I want to see if Shaden Sharp can take that next step to becoming a superstar player next season. I want to see if Nurk can become consistent. Hopefully they can get rid of him and get someone else in there because I just don't like Nusuf Nurkic on the team. But like, can they improve? I think individually, and then can Chauncey Billups make some improvements as a coach to put them in the right spots? I just need to see things. I don't really. It doesn't really matter. The Blazers are not a championship contender this season. Like I know that, and it's not even a big deal. So I'm not even worried about how the season ends. For me, it's all about just individual improvement, and then in the next offseason, build around that, bring some new guys in, and hopefully mesh it that way.
So let me ask you one follow-up, because that was a fantastic answer. If they got in as one of the 8 seeds and then got swept pretty convincingly, would that change your mind, or would you just be grateful for those young guys to get playoff experience?
I mean, I honestly, I don't really care if they make the playoffs or not, but I do think that in the general fans' minds, we would not be very happy. If it was in the playoffs as the 8 or 7 seed and you're swept in 4 games, it just seems like this is the same old Blazers. And that's the one thing we worry about is, again, because it's the same type of format they had when they were building earlier. It was Dame and CJ, 2 small guards. Now it's Dame and Ant, 2 small guards that don't play defense. Like this could be the same exact problem that the Blazers have had for so many years. And so if they go in the playoffs and say they play, a Denver in the first round or Phoenix in the first round, they get swept in 4 games, like we're just going to be sitting here like, okay, it's the same old thing. Like Dame needs more help and the Blazers don't play defense. So no, I think you're right. Like if they get swept, I might be a little more negative towards the next season, but at the same time, like I'm not expecting them to make some type of playoff run and even get to the second round. So I would expect them to lose in the first round. And that's about it, man.
That's a good answer. And, I'm going to keep that answer in my back pocket, because if something does happen, I'm going to have you right back on and be like, all right, what's the moment of truth? How are we feeling? But yeah, I mean, I think that's really all I got to talk about Portland, but I feel so much more educated now and grateful for that. So thank you. Gosh, I got to look at the spread today. I don't even know what it is against Indiana, and then make my quick judgment.
Blazers laying 3.
Oh,
total at 232. High total.
Okay, I got to say this. My betting picks have started really bad this season, have gotten it a little above 500. I'm feeling happy. Over-unders, I don't know what exactly they do in Vegas. They always find a way to make it come down to like a couple of free throws, one garbage time 3.
I had the over last night in the Utah game. It was 228, ends at 227.
It's unbelievable.
And the Blazers Jazz, they combined for 45 points only in the fourth quarter. Like I thought I had it easy, and then they scored 45 in the fourth, and I lose by a point. It's crazy.
At one point I shared on the show, I was my favorite stat, which was 202 games had been played, and the over hit 101 times, and the under hit 101 times. Just really validating all my pain with over-unders. I need to go back and check what it is now to see if there's any disparity, because it is ridiculous. But for Blazers at 3, gosh, I mean, I got a Blazers guest and Dame's coming back. Of course, I'm going to take Blazers 3. That's easy.
And that's the thing. I'm negative, but I think the Blazers are going to win tonight too. Like I'm going to lay the 3 as well. I want to get your point of view on the Blazers, though. Can I ask you a question? Like,
Absolutely.
what is your general view of the Portland Trail Blazers this season? Because I think in Portland, we are the Rose City. We get rose-colored glasses a lot of times with this Portland Trail Blazers. It's the only professional team, the big 4 that are in Portland. So we really fall in love with these guys, especially all these backups that we love. Like we'll never trade these role players. Like how is Portland viewed to you, just in general, and like other people around the country, you think?
I've always been a huge fan of Damian Lillard, even before he became a superstar. Just as an Oakland kid, just the way he really overachieved, came out of Weber State and was amazing. So I've always really been a fan of Portland and rooted for them. My view on them this season is, especially in the context of betting, love trap spots for them where people think it's an easy spot where they're just going to lay an egg. It's like my favorite thing. Great cash. But for the team as a whole in real life and not in the world of making money in bets, I like them. I would say I am concerned about the depth and defense and playing with small guards. And I hope that I can be proven wrong. I was really pleasantly surprised at the way they were playing without Damian Lillard and getting off to that 9-3 start, or 10-4, I think both. But yeah, I would say that the lack of size and depth is a little bit concerning to me. And I'm curious to see if when they play Denver 2 times in the next 10 games or something, if they're going to get pushed around by a guy that has just been a dominant force in the post.
No, I think all those are fair. Like I think I have all those questions as well. I try not to have rose-colored glasses. I think I'm a little spurned. I used to work for the Blazers, got laid off from them, so I can't like be a full invested fan again, like with my heart. But no, I mean I love the Blazers, and I hope they do well. I think you're right though, betting wise. I would be interested to see what their numbers start looking like on the road because I think Vegas has caught up to them a little bit, and that the spread record might come down a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly might. And that's a good little transition into letting you all know, as our audience, if you want to get my little bets, I'm releasing episodes once a week. So you're not getting a lot of basketball games, right? I try to do it ahead of Wednesdays because that's a big NBA day. But there's also Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And a lot of times I'll throw together 4 or 5 little bets in a Twitter thread where you could find it. You could find me at Greg O Silver. That's GregoHSilver. In fact, by the time this video is up, it's probably going to be right below my face. And yeah, just continue to like, share, subscribe. Big thank you to our guest, Stephen Vaughan, 750 The Game, and the Bleav in Blazers podcast. And of course, I'm going to plug Bleav in Blazers. I've listened to a few episodes so far. Him and Tori Jones do a fantastic job with that. So, Stephen, thank you and keep doing your thing.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Man, we'll try to get you back on our podcast. Let you throw some gambling picks our way. So we would love that.
No, that'd be great. I know that with gambling, it can be real hit or miss with a lot of people in their podcasts, but anyone who likes to have me on, I'm going to try to pretend to sound smart and we're going to get it done.
I love that, man. I love gambling, so I can talk about it all day. So I will bring you on. I don't know if Tori wants you, but I'll get you.
Okay, good. I think you have the tiebreaker over Tori, though.
Yeah. I'm older than him. I worked for the team. I got the tiebreaker.
Easy. Well, the last note before I let this intro music start, or outro music, start just getting in. I've caved into Gen Z, and I'm now posting little teaser clips on TikTok. You can search it at Screaming From The Sidelines, and I'm sure you're going to see my face and Steven's face there very soon. So you got to do what you got to do in this world. Anyway, thank you so much for all your support, and go Blazers, go gambling, go get some money, keep screaming.